Good morning, everyone. Welcome to JMC Study Hub. This is Srishti Ghosh, and today we will be covering ethics of reporting. So let's see what we will be learning in today's class. In today's class, we will be doing what is ethics. We will learn about the media ethics, the roles of ethics in journalism, the rules of ethics in journalism, and the principles of journalistic ethics. So, the first thing that we are going to learn about is what is meant by ethics. Now, we have talked about a lot of things about how journalists should write, keeping in mind the accuracy factor, keeping in mind to be completely brief and to the point, and to cross check a fact for a number of times. But there are certain areas that falls under the moral codes, quote unquote, the moral codes of a journalist. And those moral codes or the moral nature of any person, be it a journalist or any employee working under a particular organization, falls under the ethics. Now, the word ethic has been derived from the ancient Greek word ethos, which means character or moral nature. So here it is completely about ethics. Now, you might say, what is the difference between ethics and laws? Right? So, see, laws are something that you need to abide by. Those are the rules, and there is an essential penalty or a punishment at the end of the line if you do not follow or abide by those rules. But when it comes to ethics, you do not have a certain punishment at the end of the line, but it essentially comes under your morality. It essentially comes under your moral code, that whether it should be done or it should not be done. For example, let's see that there is a example that I want to give you here is, for example, there has been a woman who has been sexually harassed. Now, the identification of the woman cannot be shown because it does not come under the moral codes of any journalistic institution. It will not come under the moral codes of any human being, because you do not want to show her face or her reveal her identity on screen. This is not something that is, that essentially falls under a law. It essentially falls under the moral codes, quote unquote, the moral codes of any person. So, be it a journalist or any other person of any other profession, it falls under their moral code. Now, ethics can be defined as a set of rules of or conduct of morality that points us towards the right or the best way to act in a particular situation. So, it is not about being right or wrong. Ethics is about how you work it out in that particular situation, being absolutely the best of yourself. It is talking about the morality, right? When we were kids or children, when they read stories, they always read a particular story and there is a moral at the end of the story, right? You might have come across this particular word, the moral. So what does it mean? It means a particular a particular stance, a particular statement that essentially do not fall under any kind of right or wrong. It is doing the right thing. It is doing what is actually needed to be done. That is ethics. Now, when we apply ethics under the media arena, or when we talk about media ethics, it talks about those moral standards or those moral features that are applied to media. So we are just not talking about ethics in general. We are talking about ethics when it is applied to media. So when it is applied to media, we are essentially talking about the moral standards that are attached to media. Media ethics are essentially the self-restraint to be practiced by journalists to preserve and promote the trust of the people and to maintain their own credibility. So when we are essentially attaching media, ethics to media, we are attaching all the moralities that a journalist or any other professional who is engaged in the media profession needs to follow them. See, these are not the rules that they need to follow by, that they have to come to the office for by 9 o'clock and leave the office only after completing the day's processing news. These are not the rules, and they won't be compensated, or they won't be given punishments at the end of the day. But these are the moral codes that they must abide by, and these are the things that actually holds up the picture of the entire newspaper organization, or what your newspaper stands for. So these are the rules. These are the rules that are applied to your moral, that whether it is right or wrong. For example, your ability to keep your sources safe, that is not something a rule. You won't be punished if you reveal the name of the sources. But at the same time, it comes under your morality as a journalist that you need to save your sources, because they have acquired information for you and risked themselves to give the information to you. So of course, it will come under my morality as a journalist that I need to save my sources, and I need to I never disclose my sources. Even if you disclose your sources, nobody is going to punish you for that, right? So it comes under your morality. It comes under your moral conduct when you are dealing with ethics, whether it is just ethics or when ethics is applied to media, which is referred to as the media ethics. So this is about what ethics is all about, right? The next thing that we are going to learn is media ethics. So when we are dealing with media ethics, there are certain rules or areas of conduct that you might want to know when you are dealing with ethics under a media organization. So let's take an example that you are the journalist of a well-known newspaper organization, and you work as a beat reporter in that organization. So there are certain rules and laws that you have to abide by. See, there's the editorial policy that you need to abide by. And that is a basic rule. If you do not write your news stories according to that particular editorial policy, you will be sued, right? So there is a punishment at the end of the line. But these moral conducts that I'm going to talk to you right now are certainly coming under your morality. The first thing is honesty and fairness. See, it is essentially coming under your journalistic ability that whatever you write or whatever you present in those 20 lines has to be fair and honest. You need to be very honest about what you are writing and what you are presenting. Right? This is the first and the foremost thing that will come under your morality factor as a journalist. So no matter whether you are a freelance journalist or whether you are working for any organization, the first thing that comes into your mind is to write something that is absolutely true. You have to inform people that is absolutely honest, because your newspaper, the newspaper you are working for, is sold for this basic factor that this newspaper is known for its honesty, and they do not dilute information or exaggerates them. You have to be brief, you have to be honest, and you have to be maintaining the entire fairness across your particular news copy. The second thing, a very important moral conduct, and that is the respect for privacy. You have to maintain the privacy factor of each and every person that you are covering. For example, if there is a crime convict, if there is a sexual harassment case, if there is a child trafficking case, you need to respect about their privacy. You need to respect the privacy of the people. Privacy is something that do not essentially only falls under the laws, that there is a punishment if you do not respect their privacy. Privacy is something, privacy is something that is essentially concerned with your morality. Like, you cannot invade someone's privacy. This is something that we know from the beginning. This is something that we have been taught from the beginning, that you cannot, invade someone's privacy. So this is the same thing. Nobody is going, as a journalist, nobody is going to sue you for not giving respect to the respect for privacy. But at the same time, you should have your own moral contacts, that this is the line. There is, every time, remember, as a journalist, as a media professional, as a policeman, as anyone in the society, as any profession, there is a line that you should not cross between your profession and your moral conducts. This is very important. Be whether you are a teacher, whether you are a professor, whether you are a person who is doing nothing and sitting at home, whether you are a astronaut, whether you are of any profession, there is a certain line that you cannot cross between your profession and your moral conducts. And this is where this line stands. That is the respect for privacy. Every individual, according to our constitution, every individual is required to have their own privacy. So you cannot essentially overcome that part. The third is distinguish your duty to distinguish between facts and opinions. Always go for facts. Whenever you are presenting a news story, your opinion does not matter. And if you are presenting your opinion, you are essentially bringing down the credibility of the newspaper. So your opinions does not matter. The point of view of the editorial policy is what matters in a news story. And you need to differentiate between facts and opinions. See, a good example here is, for example, there is a car accident that has taken place in a highway, and the local people has gathered, and you go to that place to cover that particular accident. The first primary information or the sources that you're going to talk to are the policemen. The second thing you do is you need to talk to the local people who have gathered there at the time of the accident, because they are the first-hand witness. So you are going to talk to them. Now, different people will tell you different information. They will give you different kind of minute details that might not have happened, that might have happened. Now, it's your duty to understand, and it's your duty to distinguish between whether they are giving their opinions on that particular accident or whether they are giving facts on that particular accident. This is the distinguishing factor that comes under your moral conduct. You need to be very careful, and you need to catch whether those are the facts or whether those are the opinions, right? And fourth is not to discriminate. You can never discriminate when you are writing a news story. For example, you are writing about when you are writing about a communal a communal quarrel or a communal dispute that is going on between Hindu and Muslim. You can never discriminate. You cannot essentially write a news item that diminishes one religion and makes another religion go up higher. You cannot do it. It will never come under your morality as a journalist or any professional working in the media house to make such a stance, because it is something that stays out of our morals. We cannot essentially induce any kind of communal disharmony. India, the country, is all about maintaining what harmony is. And you, as a media professional in this very country, cannot essentially have that. Right? So not to discriminate. And the fifth one is not to use any dishonest mean to obtain information. Dishonest mean by here is, to be very honest, is the money. You cannot induce money to get information. But see, you have to be very practical in this situation. If you are a working journalist, you will know that sources do not talk whether in front of any journalist unless and until there is anything for them on the table. By that, I mean, if there is no gain from anything, the sources will not open their mouth. So that is why it is your duty as a journalist, as I told you in the previous class, is to create a rapport with the sources. A very important thing, whether it is your source, whether it is any other person, all you need to do is to create a rapport. Start talking, start having good communication skills. Know their weak point. This is how you deal with sources and how you not use any kind of dishonest mean to obtain information. And general standards of decency. See, this is something that falls under the general conducts of ethics, not only media ethics. It should be falling under our normal moral ethics or code of conduct, that being decent throughout our lives. It is something that we abide by for the rest of our lives. So the fact that we are being honest and fairness, the respect for privacy, duty to distinguish between facts and opinions, not to discriminate, and not to use dishonest means to obtain information, general standards of decency are some of the codes that has been accepted, all over the world, not only India. So you see the power of ethics all around the world. So it is not about just the media in India. These are the rules that are followed by the world, by the journalists around the world. These are the major ethics that are followed by the people around the world under any media institution or organization. So I hope all these points are clear to you. Next, we will move on to the role of ethics in journalism. So what role ethics essentially plays in journalism? Journalism is generally related to broadcasting and propagation of different types of news everywhere. So this makes a journalist essentially omnipresent, or you can say an active person or a professional in the field of the media. So they play a motivating role in inspiring the welfare and the development of the society through the practice of notions like truth. So since journalism is omnipresent in all the spheres of work or all the spheres of media, they need to practice their work in such a way that they are promoting truth, right? There should be no dishonesty when you are promoting something. You should not have any opinion that is inclined towards one. And that is why the fact that you should be absolutely accurate about what is happening comes foremost under the ethics of journalism. The professional ethics should make them all conscious of the need for following the principles rather than obeying the rules. Such an understanding should develop within the journalist. This is a very important point that each and every journalist should be following. And that is, it is not only about the rules that has punishment or compensation at the end of the day. It is about the understanding or obeying your morals, obeying your morality, what your six senses are actually asking you to do. Whether you need, always whenever you are doing with, I am talking about this in general. I'm not talking about just because I'm teaching you this or just because I am talking about media ethics in journalism. I am telling you this in general. Whenever in life you come across a situation that is unavoidable, do not go for the thing that whatever my heart tells or your brain tells or whatever. Those are the things that only you can find on the internet giving quotes and other things. Just think about what will be the consequences, or what will be the consequences if you do this or you do that. Think about the consequences. Do you have to lose anything? Do you have something that will affect you? Whether it is coming under your moral codes, whether this should have been done or not. This is how you should take a decision, because such kind of understanding is what makes you a better human being or a better person. So it is not about which profession you belong to, or whether you are a journalist or a teacher or a professor or an astronaut. All you need to do is to differentiate between what is right and what is wrong. And those right or wrong should not be influenced by any other third element or a third component. So you need to be very much aware about the principles of ethics rather than obeying the rules. See, rules are something that are there in each and every organization, in each and every corporate sector, in each and every office. But what does your moral says? what is your morality? Rules are something that everybody needs to follow. And if they don't follow, they will have consequences. But morality, you will not have any kind of consequences at the end of the day if you for example reveal the name of the sources. But you need to think of the fact that your source has a family. The source might be having a daughter who might be in danger because you revealed their name. So it comes under your morality. Personal integrity and collective consideration for serving the people's right to know about their surroundings, that should be the main objective of the journalist. So the main objectives of the journalist is the personal integrity and collective consideration for serving people's right to know. That people, we as a society, have the right to know about what is right and what is wrong. Right? The next thing is the increasing role of media in a democratic society should make it clear to the journalists what is anticipated from them in the modern times and up to what extent. See, today, with the coming of globalization and with the coming of a lot of technological advancement, there has been a certain commercial need that has been created among the people, among the society, among us. And we are constantly barged with information and we never complain about that because that need is constant. For example, just tell me, do you spend a day without using your mobile phone or without going through your Facebook feed or your Instagram feed? You never do that. We always keep on scrolling. We always keep ourselves engaged with the amount of information. So these journalists or the people in the media should understand how much information they need to put in. How much information does this modern time requires and up to what extent? There is always a line. Remember in that previous slide I told you, there is always a line that any professional should cross. So it is about how you are dealing with the society, because today the society is absolutely anonymous. There is no specific target audience. Everybody wants every information, to be very honest. That if I am inclined towards politics, at the end of the day I will start talking about sports because people are always fickle minded. There is no something specified interest. There is a specified interest, but people cannot stick to that. So you have to constantly barge people with information, barge with them with news items, no matter what it is, whether it is from lifestyle, politics, sports, entertainment, anything. So you have to know, the journalists should know what is anticipated from them, what is the need, what is required from them. Next is the role of the journalist is to increase and extend those means and methods by sorting out truth and providing a fair and comprehensive description of the events and the issues. Reliable and industrial journalists from all media forms and devoted to serve public with impartiality and honesty. See, the role of the journalist when it comes to ethics, the fact is your responsibility to sort any kind of problem or to sort any kind of confusion with truth and providing the description of the events and the issue, being absolutely accurate and maintaining honesty. Professional honesty is the keystone of any journalist's trustworthiness. Being a professional journalist, you need to be very careful about the fact that you are absolutely honest to whatever you are essentially writing. Your notion of truth is actually going to tell you what kind of, what kind of items or what kind of news items that you are actually or essentially dealing with. The fact that, the fact that the members of the society and the allegiance towards the ethical attitude accept this code to state the principles and standards of practice in the practice of journalism. So it is the professional honesty that you are dealing with. The next thing that we have is the reliability and principled coverage of news is very important in a newspaper to gain and sustain its target audience. If you are feeding your target audience, you have to be very specific about their need. It is very imperative for the customers or the target audience, or we can refer to them as the readers, to be craft and to be very eager to know the credibility and the ethical standards of the newspaper or the news that they are being served with or the news that they are consuming. The journalists play a very important role in this, and it is very important to produce such information and believable journalist in this profession. So you see where I am going with this point, that people need to know how much ethical your newspaper is, how much ethical your news items are, whether your journalists are professional enough to provide us with that amount of information. So that is the requirement, right? Next, we will come on to the rules of ethics in journalism. When we are talking about rules of ethics of journalism, there are certain rules that falls under our moral code. What are those? The objective of a journalist is to avoid things which bring his professional organization into a problem. You as a journalist need to avoid any problem or any consideration that is going to bring you or your professional organization into a problem. Keep out of anything that is essentially confusing. And if you yourself get involved in that, remember, you are not only getting yourself involved, you are getting your entire organization involved into that particular program. Every word of the report comes under the personal responsibility of the journalist. He or she should respect the necessary confidentiality of the sources. See, whatever you write, you are writing or you are representing the newspaper organization. And this is the exact reason why news items are checked or cross-checked for 1,000 number of times so that there is no mistake. Because the last checking is done by the editor-in-chief. And if he does not find anything, and still there is a mistake in the newspaper after the final print, it not only takes your credibility down, it takes the credibility down of the editor along with the newspaper. So you have to be very careful about the words that you are writing, about whether your word is having some kind of meaning to another people. You have to have a complete neutral view of a particular word. He or she should have respect towards the confidentiality of the sources. The thing I told you, it absolutely comes under your moral codes of conduct to say, keep your sources safe. A journalist should perceive the highest possible values in gathering, processing, and presentation of the information. A journalist should have an intact plan of how he or she is going to gather, how they are going to process the information, how they are going to present the information. See, gathering and processing is a difficult job, and of course, it is very much important. But how are you going to tell people that, yes, I have done this much of hard work throughout the day, that I have gathered and I have done all this processing work, I have gathered the videos and the pictures from the spot. How are you going to make them believe that? Your presentation skills will make them, tell that. A very important, for example, you are in a cookery show. You have gathered all the ingredients and you made the dish and everything and all. But if your presentation is not good, will it be a good thing? Will the judges be, satisfied with that? They will be not. Because your last and the very important step, presentation, cannot go wrong. That is the result, because that will show how much hard work you have done. So your ability to gather, process, and present is very important. He or she should show extreme sensitivity in delicate cases. Whenever you are dealing with any kind of delicate cases, you need to be very careful the way you handle that particular case. The next rule is, A journalist should not accept bribe. You can never expect, expect not getting caught when you are accepting bribe. So that should be one thing. It essentially, nobody is going to give you, punishment, because nobody is going to find out. But when you are caught that you are taking bribe, that will essentially bring down your morality level. That will essentially affect your career and your credibility as a journalist. Journalists must always be conscious while publishing the names of the alleged or accused in all cases. A journalist must try to avoid conflict of interest and should write always on the basis of facts. A foremost thing, he or she should not publish the names of the alleged or accused in the cases. The journalist should never get themselves into any kind of conflicts of interest, and always write a news element that is absolutely based on facts. The journalists are expected to be as accurate as possible. Controversial facts must be reported with attribution. Even if you are dealing with any kind of controversial facts, make sure you attribute the people who are saying that particular thing. And a journalist is expected to check the slanderous and the libelous context of the report, must have an idea about to show how much needs to be disclosed. See, when I was talking about that there is a line between what your profession tells you to do and your moral conduct. And secondly, you might throughout the day, the entire organization might gather a whole lot of news about a particular case, okay, maybe a controversial case. But in that case, it totally comes down to the major people of the organization that which news needs to be out there among the public. Not every information are disclosed. Remember one thing about any case, not every information are disclosed at all. There is a certain line that is drawn by these news organization or any organization. So you have to have an idea about how much the information needs to be out there among the public to discuss. Because once it is out there, it is totally out of your control. So you need to know how much there is a need to get disclosed. So these were the rules of ethics in journalism. Next, we will see the principles. There are certain principles that the Indian journalists or the Indian media professionals follow, which are termed as the journalistic ethics. First is accuracy and fairness. Accuracy and fairness, to be very accurate and fair in writing. This is also present in the principles that the world of media follows. There is pre-publication verification. Before you publish anything, make sure that that information is 100% true. Even if you have like the slightest doubt about whether that fact is right or not, whether that sentence is right or not, cross-check it, run it through the editors, go through the fact checkers, call up your sources, make it, verify it for the 100th time. And even if at the end you cannot verify whether it is, whether it is right or wrong, cut that information out. But never publish anything that is not verified previously. Right? Caution against defamatory writings. You have to be very cautious about defaming someone. You have to be cautious about the angle that you are writing, whether you are defaming a person or not. Then is fourth, privacy. We have learned about privacy. It is a very important ethic that comes under it. Next is publication of names and images. Of course, any accused or alleged should not be, published. The names should not be published. Paramount information not to be, not to be jeopardized. Like information regarding the government, officials, or any kind of official information should not be jeopardized just because media is having access to that. Recording during interviews, you cannot record the calls or the questioning and the answers without a proper permission. Governing communal disputes. You have to govern the communal disputes. Do not write anything that actually provokes a communal disharmony among the people. No sensational headline. Your newspaper should not turn into anything that refers to as the yellow journalism. Make sure that your headlines are normal and neutral. It can be a bit perky and very good in nature, but at the same time, it cannot be sensational. You cannot agitate your readers or your consumers because that will create a negative effect upon the newspaper. So, no sensational headlines at all. Avoid cross commercialization. Cross commercialization is something that is done frequently by the newspapers and other media houses, but that should be avoided by the journalists. See, all these principles, do you think that if you do not obey these, anybody is going to give you a punishment at the end of the day? These are not laws. These are essentially not laws. These are the ethics. These are coming under your moral conduct. You know that, whenever you are calling someone or taking an interview, you cannot record essentially without taking any permission. When it comes to privacy, you have to maintain each and everyone's privacy. You cannot defame a person just like that with your writing. You cannot use sensational headlines because it is going to agitate the people. You have to govern the communal disputes. You cannot essentially agitate any kind of, any tribe or any people or any religion. You have to protect the government information. You have to protect what information you are having. You have to protect the publication of names and the images. You have to blur it out. You have to know what is coming under your moral conduct. These are the principles of journalistic ethics that do not fall under any kind of rules or any kind of laws. These are the moral conducts that you need to follow. And these are essentially followed by the Indian media. Remember, these are the Indian media principles that you need to follow. And the 6 or 7 principles that we learned in the previous slide, that was followed by the entire world media, irrespective of which media you actually practice or which media you actually work for. These are these are the 10 principles of journalistic ethics that you need to follow if you work for any Indian media organization. That is accuracy and fairness, pre-publication verification, caution against defamatory writings, privacy, publication of names and images, paramount information not to be jeopardized, recording of calls and interviews, without a permission, governing communal disputes, no sensational headlines, and avoiding cross commercialization. Right? Now we will come to the questioning part of our ethics of reporting. The first question that I have with you is, from which language the word ethics has been derived from? The options are A, Latin, B, Greek, option C, English, and option D, Sanskrit. So the word ethics, which means the moral conducts of any person, has been essentially derived from the word ethos, which means characters or moral conducts, characteristics or moral conducts. And this word ethos is essentially a Greek word. So option B, a Greek word, is your correct answer. The word ethics is derived from the ancient Greek word, which means character or moral of nature. So when you differentiate between ethics and laws, we are differentiating it between that laws are something that you need to abide by, and you are down to abide by them. But ethics are not told by someone. Ethics are something that you need to perform because it falls under your moral conducts. Each and every organization are having their own ethics that needs to be followed. So option B, Greek, is your right answer, because the word ethics has been derived from the Greek word ethos, which means character or moral of nature. Next question is, ethics is also known as the philosophy of what? Options are A, society, Option B, justice. Option C, morality. And option D, none of the above. So, when we are dealing with ethics from a philosophical point of view, remember we are dealing with something that is coming under our moral conducts. So, when we are talking about ethics as a philosophy, we are talking about morality. That is option C. Ethics is also known as the philosophy of morality because it is considered to be as one of the moral conducts of any working journalist or any professional of working for any media organization. So it is about the morality that is coming under your characteristics. So option C, morality, is your correct answer. Next question that I have with you is the practice of journalism, the is more accountable as a profession. Options are A, journalism ethics, option B, honesty, option C, accuracy, and option D is all of the above. So a journalist is accountable for the practice of ethics as a profession in his journalistic ethics, in his honesty, the way he maintains honesty while writing a news item, and accuracy when he needs to work with the accurate news items. But what makes his profession more accountable is basically the journalistic ethics. His ethics are going to make his professional more accountable of what he is dealing with day to day work. A lot of students make the mistake of making it honesty or accuracy, but the fact that it is the journalist's ethics that makes his work more accountable as a profession. So the practice of journalistic ethics makes journalism more accountable as a profession because it comes under the moral conduct of any professional in the media organization. So option A, journalistic ethics or journalism ethics, will be your correct answer. Next question is ethics of reporting includes option A, principles of moral conduct, option B, canons of journalistic approach, option C, both A and B, and option D, none of the above. So we are talking about a very confused options that are available. What they are saying is ethics of reporting includes principles of moral conduct, canons of journalistic approach, or it can be both A and B, or option D is none of the above. So it will be essentially option C, A and B, because journalistic ethics and standards comprises of both principles of ethics and good practice that are applicable on a journalist. And these are the moral conducts that are followed generally for presenting a news story. So you need to follow the principles of moral conduct and canons of journalistic approach. So option C is your correct answer. The next question that I have with you is elements of journalistic ethics include, the options are A, truthfulness, option B, accuracy, option C, objectivity, and option D, all of these. So when we talk about the elements of journalistic ethics, we talk about truthfulness, we talk about the accurate ways in presenting a news story, we talk about the presenting a news story that is absolutely objective, right? Having some kind of objective. So all of these A, B, and C together forms the elements of journalistic ethics. So the elements of journalistic ethics will include truthfulness, accuracy, and objectivity. Therefore, your option D, all of these will be your correct answer. So I hope all the questions and the examples and understanding are clear to you. If you have any doubt or any question regarding these, please let me know, and that will be it for today's class. Thank you so much.